Hello, YouTubers, running compatriots, bootlickers, shills, deaths, slayers, peasants, vassals, jihadis, terrorists, Syrians. I'm a useful idiot. Today I want to talk about an article that came out in the New York Times. It's talking about Syria could very well break apart. And I've talked about this in various contexts and different videos. And this comes as no surprise to me. And I've been speculating about this for quite some time. So what the article goes on to say is it talks about the fact that the northern part of Syria is now considered Al-Qaeda territory. A lot of jihadi groups, including the Nusra Front, control northern Iraq and the areas around the Turkish border. Then we have the Kurds, who have carved out their own autonomous region in the northeast, and that is something that we've all talked about in other videos as well. And then we also have the Hezbollah and Lebanese fighters that have basically taken over a border region along Lebanon, because some 30,000 Lebanese actually live in villages on the Syrian side of the border. So there's three areas right there that effectively are not under the control of the Syrian Assad regime, and could potentially turn into their own autonomous or perhaps even independent regions when this conflict is finally over. And this goes hand in hand with various things I've talked about. For example, the fact that Syria could basically break apart and the Kurdish region become autonomous or perhaps even independent. And there could be moves to integrate various Kurdish regions together at some point down the road because of this. But I get ahead of myself. Let's get back to the fact that Syria may break apart. Now the state of Libya has descended into chaos as well. And there's been speculation that Libya could break apart. There's a region, ethnic region, around Benghazi and where the oil is that's talked about being independent for quite some time. And if Libya should descend further into chaos as it is now, U.S. troops are on alert in Europe because of the violence in Libya. Of course, we already know about all the blowback and whatnot that's come from Libya. And not only that, we have the ethnic tensions in Libya, but of course, just like Syria and Iraq, the country is loaded with weapons. And in the case of Syria and Libya, of course, they're weapons that the West piled into those states, and now Al-Qaeda has them. And another problem with Libya, of course, we had a transitional council, and it was full of everybody: monarchists, Gaddafi, ex-Gaddafi people, jihadis, and that government was set up by the Western powers and was flimsy to begin with. And that's another reason why I'm not really shocked about events that have unfolded in Libya since the invasion, the NATO invasion, because it is just a country with lots of accidents waiting to happen. And not only that, just as in Syria, we have violence spilling over all throughout the region because of the conflict in Syria. The ongoing violence in Libya has spilled over into Algeria and Tunisia. And then, of course, all the fighters that went to Mali from Libya, a lot of them are now returning to Libya. And it's only making things worse. And I can't help but think this reminds me of Iraq as well. Iraq is a country that now is descending once again into sectarian violence, and there's talks about, serious talks about the fact that it may have to break into a Shia region, a Sunni region, and a Kurdish region. And so we see the same pattern playing out in all three of these countries. And of course, a lot of it's due to Western efforts to destabilize, and obviously those efforts have been very effective. And but it brings up two things that I've talked about in various videos. One is the fact that we're still dealing with the colonial legacy. And all of these countries basically were only kept together by authoritarian power. So in Libya we had Gaddafi, in Syria we have Assad, and in Iraq we had Saddam Hussein. And it takes a strong man with an authoritarian government to keep all those sectarian and religious and tribal rivalries in check. And now that that power has been removed and the vacuum has not been filled, Syria, Libya, and Iraq all descend back into chaos because those old colonial borders will need to be redressed. And so that's the other part of this that plays into topics I've just discussed before, is this continued fragmentation in the world. And that's a pattern I see happening here on a micro level, and something that's happening all over the globe. All these states are redressing the post-colonial world, they're redressing the post-empire world, they're redressing the post-Soviet world, they're redressing the Middle Eastern world, in which all of these regions could conceivably break down into smaller components to redress the post-colonial world. And we see that all over the place. Pakistan is another example where there's Baluch insurgency, because Baluchistan is not technically recognized as part of Pakistan, certainly by the Baluchs. And we find that in Nigeria. There's a conflict going on there now as well. It's painted as the western-backed Nigeria of the south fighting a militant Islamic insurgency in the north, but it actually has more to do with ethnic and tribal rivalries and striving independence movements, more than necessarily a jihadi element in Nigeria. But anyway, so I just wanted to talk about that, the fact that we have this same pattern repeating, and we have Libya descending into that same pattern, we have Iraq descending into that same pattern, in spite of 10 years of U.S. occupation, in spite of NATO bombing Libya and setting up a transitional government. Now we have the destabilization and civil war in Syria that could also result in the breakup of that nation. So a pattern we see over and over and over again. Certainly the variables, there's a lot of different variables and different variations on this theme, and each of those situations has its own unique characteristics, but they certainly do seem to follow a pattern. And it is unfortunate that the American legacy is going to be leaving an Iraq that's crippled and barely reconstructed from a 10-year-long war, and Libya will be racked with pain and strife for some time to come as a result of the invasion as well. And needless to say, it's a no-brainer to suggest that Syria has a lot more pain to come before this is all over. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.